go. Yep.
Good afternoon, staff and members of the public. I declare the ordinary council meeting of 30 June 2026 open at 2 p.m. The Shire of Carnarvon acknowledges and respects the Ingada and Bayungu people as traditional custodians of the lands where we live and work. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Shire of Carnarvon is committed to honouring the traditional custodians' unique cultural and spiritual relationships to the land, waters and seas and their rich contribution to society. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to facilitate community participation for minute-taking purposes and as required by the Act. Members of the public are reminded that in accordance with the meeting procedures, Local Law 2021, mobile phones and other electronic devices should be switched off and not used during this meeting. Attendance will be recorded in the minutes as per the requirements of the Act. There are no apologies. There are no approved leaves of legal absence. Item 2, elected members and officers are reminded of the requirements of section 5.65 of the Local Government Act 1995 to disclose any interest during the meeting or when the matter is to be discussed. CEO, are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, we have one declaration for 7.2.4 and impartiality. So,
Thank you. We'll detail that when we approach that item. Item 3.1, questions taken on notice from the previous meeting. Responses to questions taken on notice from the previous council meeting have been included in the agenda published online and available in printed form in the chambers today. Item 3.2, public question time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Public question time is allocated a minimum period of 15 minutes in accordance with the Act. The Shire of Carnarvon Meeting Procedures Local Law 2021 allows each member of the public to ask up to 2 questions before other members of the public will be invited to ask their questions. If myself as the presiding member determine that questions are out of order due to the use of offensive or objectionable expressions or are defamatory, they will not be considered, recorded nor responded to. I declare public question time open at 2:02 p.m. CEO, have we received any questions prior to the meeting? Yeah. We received a question prior to the meeting by Mr. Fullerton. If you'd like to come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Dr. Alexander Robert Fullerton, 118 Moore Street, Grays. I indulge. Sir, just a short preamble to my question. Have food festive. Morning of the 16th of June, ratepayers and residents of Carnarvon treated to what might be described as a bureaucratic theatre worthy of Shakespearean farce. Chair of the special council meeting took 6 minutes of mostly bureaucratic jargon, quotation legislation, support agenda prepared entirely by the administration to ratify his substitution of former elected members of council, drafted committees of council to himself as administrator. While I appreciate strict adherence to legislation and protocols presented, the fact he faced a chamber of empty chairs while moving motions and resolving them in the affirmative would not be out of place in Monty Python satire. I fail to see how the chair can perform the role of 8 persons elected by the local community to represent their views and concerns. It is unreasonable to expect him to have deep personal and community background required by oversight of the administration required by elected members by law, if not by rational logical thought. To me, he will be obliged to rely on the advice and opinions of the very structure he's been appointed to oversee. The issue to be addressed in item 7.3.1 of this agenda is to find exactly at that point. It's with that background in mind that I ask this question. Does the administrator intend to investigate and publicly report the events leading to the resignation of the Shire President and 5 elected members, which has resulted in his appointment as administrator and assumedly caretaker, the new council can be reformed in 6 months' time? I believe the majority of ratepayers and residents are eagerly seeking answers as to what happened and why. The question on everyone's lips in the community is, in parochial terms, what the blank happened. I understand the chair will need to consider this question and do not expect an answer at this stage.
Thanks, Mr. Fullerton, for, I think there are a number of questions in that. It's not uncommon for commissioners to be appointed in different circumstances. The Act provides for 1, 3 or 5 commissioners to be appointed. In this instance, the Governor, on the advice of the Minister, recommended the appointment of a sole commissioner. I appreciate the sentiment, and in fact, you're probably I will speak a little bit more on it later in the meeting when I get to make a statement around the need for me to be able to listen to community, and community members probably more so than an ordinary council because of the unique circumstances that exist. With respect to the circumstances surrounding the resignation of the majority of council members, I have met with, or at least spoken to 6 of the 8 former council members. I've also met with numerous community members who have offered their perspectives. The role of council is defined by section 2.7 of the Act, and my role is not to administer the local government. That is the role and the exclusive function of the CEO as defined by the Act. The reasons for which former council members resigned are ultimately a matter for them, and some instances are a matter of the public record. I'm focused on ensuring the Shire is in the best position it can possibly be ahead of elections in December, where the governance function of council will return to those 8 elected members that you referred to. And if there is anything that I can do in the short time that I have here to prepare for that new council, but also improve the performance of the local government in both the administration and the council, I'll intend to give that my fullest attention.
Thank you, sir. With your indulgence, Mark, I have another.
Yes.
I have provided a schedule pending that to you. My second question is as to the financial conduct of the Shire of Carnarvon. I've extracted a number of items from the statements of comprehensive income of the Shire of Carnarvon for the fiscal years 2021-2 to 2025-6 as appended. In particular, I've examined rate revenue, employee costs, that is wages and salaries, grants for capital works, and ultimately the final excess of income over expenditure for those years. I find that the years 22 and 23, small excesses of income over expenditure, net profits in layman's terms, have occurred despite significant losses being posed in the corresponding budgets, the comparative based on rated revenue. However, since then, despite profits being budgeted for in 25 and 26, significant shortfalls have occurred. These are in excess of $8 million for the 2 years. Further, I note as to capital grants, the constant discrepancies between expected grants in budgets and the shortfalls over the 5 years to total in excess of $30 million. That is, in layman's terms, promise of receiving money that came over 6 million a year on average. Given that these shortfalls will undoubtedly have significant impact on the financial position of the Shire of Carnarvon, will the administrator place all further decisions as to further projects on hold until a formal council of elected members can address these issues? I point specifically to item 7.3 this agenda as
Thanks for your question, Dr. Fullerton. I didn't have the opportunity to consider this question nor your comprehensive table prior to the meeting, so we probably are going to have to take a fair degree of it on notice. I will say just, I guess, at a very high level, in the 5 weeks that I've been here and particularly focused on budget planning, there is considerable external funding that is available to the Shire largely through grant programs. I think it's in the order of about $20 million. And of course, with all similar types of funding, they are revenue is generally received on a milestone basis, and depending upon the speed at which a project progresses, predicting when revenue will be received and expenditure incurred isn't a perfect science, and that may be part of the answer to your question. But I'll just ask if the CEO has anything further to add. Otherwise, we might need to take it on notice.
Just through the chair, I think a very good project to be able to draw to your attention is the airport upgrade project, and council has been assured of that funding to a degree from the state since 2024, the 23-24 budget, and proceeded to budget for it. However, the project hasn't progressed in a milestone way, and so therefore we haven't spent the money, but equally we haven't been able to claim the money. We have set up some new rules where we will not be bringing in project funds until the project actually commences, and we will be incurring the costs. So those sorts of things won't skew the budget so much in the future. So we are looking at some investment and some grant funding parameters and protocols to try and reduce that from happening. Equally, the new audit risk and improvement committees, there is a whole different level of grant oversight now that will be seen, and we do have external members on that as well to help ensure transparency. And we report every 6 months on the grants that are approved, I suppose, but then those that the funding has actually been received and where it's sitting if it has been received against the expenditure.
Dr. Fullerton, I think that we'll take the specifics of your question on notice, because we'll like to provide a detailed response to those.
Just realised I didn't declare a conflict of interest, so that may be perceived. Not only a legal academic, Curtin and PhD in law schools, also happened to be a deputy presiding member of the Upper House Law and Committee. Should have said that. Yeah.
No, thank you, Dr. Fullerton. I don't think there's any compulsion of to disclose, but your discretion disclosure is noted. Are there any further questions from the public? If not, I'll declare.
Well, I might just ask, it's just a request really. My name's Wallace Dale from Carnarvon. Just wanted to ask whether or not it's possible to have, with your rate notices that go out, pie chart showing income or revenue and expenditure. And I find, as we had in the past, when we put out the pie charts, people were finding it much easier to distinguish between what happened last year, what happened this year. Seeing a pie chart much easier than going through 2 or 3 pages of figures, etc. So my request would be if we get a pie charts or revenue and expenditure going out with the rate notices, please.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Dale. I think it's a good question and a good suggestion. It's quite commonplace for local governments to issue a budget newsletter with their rates notice, which I think, to your point, presents that information in plain English and sometimes in graphical forms that people can appreciate quite easily. So we'll make sure that's part of our process. Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, I'll declare public question time closed at 2:14 p.m. Item 4, confirmation and receiving of minutes. I will move that council confirm the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 28 April 2026 and the special council meetings held on 29 April 2026 and 16 June 2026 is a true and accurate record and declare that resolved by simple majority. Furthermore, I move that council receive the minutes of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee held on 16 June 2026 and declare that resolved by simple majority. Item 5, announcements by the presiding member without discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce myself to you as the Commissioner of the Shire of Carnarvon. I was appointed to this office by the Governor of Western Australia with effect from 27 May 2026. This followed 6 resignations from the office of councillor, resulting in the council being unable to meet and achieve quorum. On the advice of the Minister for Local Government, the Governor declared by order the remaining offices of council to be vacant, appointed a commissioner to discharge the duties of council, and set a date for the election of council for 3 December 2026. My term as commissioner will cease once that election concludes and the new council meets for the first time. It has been 5 short weeks since my appointment, and I have appreciated the support that I've received from the staff of the Shire of Carnarvon, former council members and the community. Undertaking this function previously discharged by 8 elected members of the community will not be without its challenges. However, I'm confident with the support and guidance of the community that the good work of the Shire of Carnarvon can continue until an elected council returns and takes its rightful place. I'm no stranger to local government, having served in the state parliament for more than 12 years and having previously served as the Shadow Minister for Local Government and a member of the Select Committee into Local Government. As an MP, I had 63 local governments in my electorate of the agricultural region and had productive working relationships with all of them. More recently, I served as Commissioner of the town of Port Hedland following the loss of quorum in that district. I'm a strong believer in local government and the role that it plays in community development and service delivery, especially in regional communities. Can I also recognise and extend my thanks to the former members of council, some of whom have given decades of service to the Shire. The role of an elected member can, at times, be enormously challenging, and the sacrifices that they make in the interests of their community not well understood. The commitment of their families and loved ones must also be recognised in supporting their contribution. My priorities since taking the declaration of office have been the progression of the 2026-27 budget as the highest priority. To do this, I've had to have some level of understanding of emerging issues, including being briefed on project delivery, capital demands, workforce planning, and the financial health of the organisation. This afternoon, Council will consider, among other things, the statement of objects and reasons that will be publicly consulted upon in determining the differential rates that will be adopted in July and then subject to ministerial approval. I'll have more to say on this later. I also want to celebrate our organisational successes. On the Wednesday that I took the declaration of office was the last day of the Tourism WA conference, which was successfully hosted by Carnarvon. This was also shortly off the back of the Nully Festival. Whilst I know that these events have stretched the resources of our Shire during this time, the feedback that I've received from the community and key government and industry stakeholders have been very positive and are a credit to the hard work and determination of our staff and the community. I'd like to recognise that one of our own was awarded the Public Service Medal in the King's Birthday Honours announced by the Governor-General. Mrs Danielle Hill, PSM, has been an employee of the Shire of Carnarvon for more than 30 years. This prestigious recognition celebrates Danny's outstanding contribution, commitment to public service and the lasting impact she has had across generations of elected members, staff and the community. Congratulations, Danny. In the last month, we have also seen the passing of Coral Bay pioneer Bill Brogan. Whilst I never had the pleasure of meeting Bill, whilst in Coral Bay 2 weeks ago, many locals shared their affection for him and the role that he played in the early development of Coral Bay and the local tourism industry as the Rotto of the North. On behalf of the Shire of Carnarvon, we extend our condolences to Bill's family and friends and acknowledge his contribution to our community. I also want to take this opportunity at ordinary council meetings to report on my activities for the last month. Since commencing as Commissioner, the following engagements have occurred, excluding internal meetings and briefings. Declaration of office before the Director General, Lainey Chopping, and in the presence of Minister Hannah Beasley and staff. meetings with the Department of Local Government, Industry Regulation and Safety, meeting with the Local Government Inspector, Mr. Tony Brown, OAM, meetings with former councillors by phone and in person, meetings with local members of Parliament, briefing from the Department of Transport and Major Infrastructure on seawater inundation project, briefing by More Australia on financial position and budget planning, briefing by consultant on child map study and findings, meeting with the WA Local Government Association, engagement with key development stakeholders, attended a meeting of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, presided over a special council meeting, meeting with the local police officer in charge and acting inspector, attended the launch of the Common Ground Initiative, meeting with the Lotteries House stakeholders, visited Coral Bay Waste Site, Airstrip, Town Site and toured the RAC development, met with Coral Bay stakeholders, locals and business operators, inspected road improvement projects on Manilia Linden Road, represented the Shire by attending the Gascoyne Regional Road Group, Northwest Defence Alliance and the Walgo Gascoyne Zone meetings, and held other numerous media and community engagements. It was a real privilege on my first day here in Carnarvon to share lunch with local elders and artists on the final day of Reconciliation Week, as we reflected upon the elder portraits and the artistic journey that created them. And on this note, just a reminder that the Gascoyne Art Awards is this Friday night at the Library and Art Gallery, with the exhibition open over the next 8 weeks. Good luck to all of the artists, and I look forward to attending on Friday night. We have a big agenda before council today, so I might leave it there for now. I want to remind the community that my email and my mobile number are on the Shire website, and I welcome feedback, suggestions and advice. In fact, community interaction is critical to my role as I endeavour to make the best decisions possible for the community over the next few months. We now move to item 7, departmental reports, 7.1 governance, 7.1.1 status of council decisions. I'll make a brief comment here, and it also applies to the next. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Presentations, petitions and memorials, there are none. It now takes us to 7.1.1. I'll make a brief comment here, and it also applies to the next item, being item 7.1.2. Whilst it might be consistent with good governance, reporting of these items to council is not a requirement of the Act. Whilst there is merit in council considering such matters from time to time, reporting on a monthly basis, in my view, is resource intensive for the administration and council members. A staged program of considering the status of council decisions, actions performed under delegated authority, alongside the quarterly budget review, could be a rolling 3-month program, whereby these reports become quarterly rather than monthly. Given that the frequency of these reports was not determined by a resolution of council, I'm not minded at this time to move a formal resolution. However, I ask that the administration consider these comments and whether there is some value in adjusting the work schedule for both officers and council members accordingly. There is an officer's recommendation found at page 12 of the agenda. Which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.1.2, I substantially spoke to this item at the previous item. There is an officer's recommendation found on page 19 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.1.3, the monthly financial report for April 2026. This item provides to council the monthly report on financial activity as required by the Act. As the May ordinary council meeting was abandoned, arising from elected member resignations and the inability for council to meet, this meeting will consider both the reports for April and May. It should be noted that in late May, the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, the Honourable Catherine King MP, announced a $4.8 million relief package for regional airports, that had outstanding debts with Rex Airlines, of which we were one. The Shire of Carnarvon has received the ex-GST component of the debt by way of a grant from the federal government, which amounts to $355,188. This was not anticipated at the time of adoption for the 2025-26 budget and is a welcome announcement and contributes favourably to our financial position. The officer's report is detailed, and I thank the administration for the information that has been provided. There is an officer's recommendation found at page 26 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.1.4, the monthly financial report for May 2026. This item receives the monthly report on financial activity for May. There is some important information in both the commentary on operating revenue and operating expenditure, which will likely impact on our full year financial result. The Shire is managing significant external funding and capital projects, and predicting project progress and the related milestone payments is not a perfect science, as I mentioned in public question time. I suspect that we will have significant carryover expenditure from this financial year to the next, as well as revenue that was expected in this financial year that is now more likely in the next. I draw attention to the table found on page 31 of the agenda, which outlines significant expenditure. Almost $870,000 of this relates to the response to Cyclone Narelle and Mitchell. This was not and cannot be budgeted for, and it is possible that not all of these funds expended will be recoverable from the disaster recovery funding arrangements. This highlights how vulnerable the region is to natural disaster impacts, a fact that is likely to increase in coming years and decades, and therefore the need to bolster our financial reserves to meet these challenges. There is an officer's recommendation found at page 33 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. Item 7.1.5, adoption of the 2026-27 annual fees and charges. This item seeks to update the fees and charges of the Shire of Carnarvon for the 2026-27 financial year. As the report advises, Regulation 5(2)B of the Local Government Financial Management Regulations 1996 requires a local government to review fees and charges not less than once per financial year. Many of the fees and charges contained in this schedule are set by statutory law or have limits applied in which we are required to set fees. Outside of these, local government has a discretion in accordance with the Act. The Act requires consideration be given to A, the cost to the local government of providing the service of goods, and B, the importance of the service or goods to the community, and C, the price at which the service or goods could be provided by an alternative provider. I note that the report recommends that the revised schedule of fees and charges commence on 15 July 2026, providing 2 weeks notice to the community. Each fee has been independently assessed by officers, and whilst a default indexation rate has been applied, there are exceptions to this based on the criteria-based assessment previously mentioned. Section 4 of the report identifies material differences and new fees and charges, which include a discounted rate for seniors, the blowholes, and a revised fee structure for the Coral Bay Airstrip. The draft 2026-27 budget contains significant capital expenditure to further improve the Coral Bay Airstrip, which will support the primary user of the facility, being the tourism industry and local marine-based tourism operators. I've been made aware early in my term of the importance of this airstrip and its direct connection to marine-based tourism when the airstrip was closed following heavy rainfall and localised flooding earlier this month. It is my view that the cost to ratepayers needs to be balanced with the economic opportunity that the airstrip provides to tourism operators, and therefore these costs need to be more equitably shared. Whilst landing and parking fees will increase, I recommend that Council in future years consider further increases in line with airstrip costs and improvements. In the short term, the Shire should consider technological solutions to provide better information on landings and visitation, but also weather conditions which might impact upon aviation safety. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 42 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by absolute majority. Corporate services, 7.2. 7.2.1, quarterly budget review for March 2026. This item contains the quarterly budget review, which improves the budget position by $99,800. It is a little unusual that we're considering the Q3 budget review on the last day of the financial year, but that is the circumstances that we find ourselves in. There is a comprehensive summary of budget amendments found on page 46 of the agenda. Many of these matters have been canvassed in my initial briefings, budget workshops, and in the agenda briefing session that was held last week to my satisfaction. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 47 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by absolute majority. 7.2.2, accounts paid under delegation for April 2026. I'll speak to this and the next item together, which is the receipt of accounts paid under delegation for the months of April and May. I asked numerous questions in relation to the accounts at the agenda briefing session held last week, and I thank the officers for their responses and the follow-up information that I was provided following that workshop. We have a officer's recommendation at page 50 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.2.3, accounts paid under delegation, May 2026. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 53 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.2.4, transition of banking providers. With regard to the matter in item 7.2.4, transition of banking providers, I disclose that I have an association with Gingin Districts Community Financial Services Limited, a public company limited by shares that owns and operates Community Bank Gingin and Lancelin under a franchise agreement with Bendigo and Adelaide Bank Limited. I'm a non-executive director and company secretary of the company. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly. This item before us seeks authorisation to transition from our current banking service provider, ANZ, to the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. The matter arises from a recommendation from the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee at its 21 April 2026 meeting. The exercise is expected to be cost neutral and aims to address a number of risks associated with internal controls and banking processes. The transition is likely to take 6 to 12 months to complete and will occur in a staged process. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 60 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. And I wish officers well if anyone's ever changed banks. Good luck. 7.2.5, advertising or approval to advertise differential rates for 2026-27. This item signals the formal commencement of the budget setting process. That is, the Shire of Carnarvon having a differential rating structure is required by section 6.36 of the Act to give public notice of its intention to levy differential rates, provide details of each rate and a minimum rate, and invite public submissions for a period of not less than 21 days, and prepare a document describing the objects of and reasons for each proposed rate and minimum payment. Council is required to consider any submissions received before imposing the proposed rate or minimum payment. The Shire of Carnarvon will also be required to seek ministerial approval in accordance with the Act, which might take a further 3 weeks to receive. At this point, Council hopes to consider the public submissions and seek ministerial approval at the July Ordinary Council meeting or a special council meeting called for this purpose. The formal consideration and adoption of the 2026-27 budget is therefore likely to occur in August. I want to stress that work is continuing on the draft budget right through the public submission period and up to the July meeting, which will consider this matter again. The proposed differential rates and minimum payments will increase total rate yield by 8.5%. This will increase total rate revenue by $624,444. The long-term financial plan adopted by Council projected rate increases of 7% annually. This report recommends an amount of $110,214 above the Council endorsed LTFP. Understanding our financial position and being involved in several budget workshops has given me some understanding of the cost pressures faced by the Shire. Whilst this proposal and the draft budget is no silver bullet, a new council must determine and implement a plan, most likely across the next decade, that structurally shifts the budget and the rating strategy to ensure that it can meet community expectations into the future. Some of the key budget pressures that I might summarise include the operation of 2 airports. And as I previously mentioned this afternoon, significant capital investment is planned for both airports in the coming financial year. The Coral Bay waste site relocation will be a complex and indeed costly project over several years. The emergency management cost pressures on the Shire. Each time we make an insurance claim relating to a natural disaster event, it comes with an excess of $100,000. We have, as I previously mentioned, $870,000 expended in emergency response to Tropical Cyclone Narelle and Mitchell. We are expecting increasing costs associated with our Community Emergency Services Manager, which will increase from 10% of the position cost to 40% following the withdrawal of the Shires of Shark Bay and Upper Gascoyne from the program. We estimate $14 million impact on our road networks, which will be the subject of a claim to the disaster recovery funding arrangements. And of course, the need to replace the roof of the Civic Centre, which is our primary cyclone rated evacuation centre. Not to mention the capital demands in plant replacement. We have an ageing fleet of light and heavy vehicles. There is an active consideration at the moment around the urgent need to replace some of that plant this coming financial year that has reached or will reach end of life. We then, of course, have the cost of conducting an election in December. That is a cost that certainly wasn't planned and would ordinarily be occurred in the coming financial year. And obviously the costs associated with onboarding and training new council. All of that with a backdrop of limited cash reserves to insulate against unexpected financial impacts, with the budget predicting closing balances this financial year of less than $2 million. I'm cognizant of the current cost of living environment, and I need to balance this with rising costs across our operations. The budget is very much business as usual, continuation of the projects already commenced by Council, addressing urgent matters such as plant replacement and planning for our future through airport and waste upgrades. The modelled average GRV residential movement is approximately $175 per annum or $3.37 a week. That is not to say that each rates notice will reflect that average, with some higher and some lower due to other factors such as valuation and land use change needing to be considered. It is important to note that 80% of our rate base comes from GRV residential. I encourage the community to consider the statement of objects and reasons, potentially make a submission ahead of further consideration of this matter at the July Ordinary Council meeting. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 68 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. (7.3.1) South Carnarvon Seawater Inundation Mitigation Project endorsement to execute disaster ready fund agreement. This report is very detailed and is informed by several scientific studies and independent reports which are listed in the schedule. The genesis of this project was in 2023 when the Department of Transport and the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage commissioned the statewide coastal inundation assessment for Western Australia. It identified Busselton, Bunbury and South Carnarvon as the highest statewide priorities and identified each of extreme risk of seawater inundation events. Further studies have evaluated the effectiveness of the town's existing inundation protection system, which consists of the South Carnarvon Surge Wall, constructed in 2004, and the Carnarvon Facine Wall, constructed in 2013. The proposed project, the subject of this report, seeks to improve existing defence measures with a 50-year planning horizon. Whilst the project seeks to raise existing protection heights to 2.8 metres AHD, this will ultimately be determined by detailed design, budgetary constraints and community feedback. The South Carnarvon Surge Wall has a minimum height of 2.3 metres AHD, notwithstanding the design height was originally 3.3 metres AHD. The Facine Wall varies in height, but generally achieves 2.4 metres AHD. Notwithstanding the design height was between 2.7 metres and 2.95 metres AHD. The current weak point is, of course, in the vicinity of West Street and the Yacht Club, where inundation will occur from just 1.6 metres AHD. This is also the area where temporary levee banks were installed ahead of Tropical Cyclone Narelle's passing at a cost of approximately $50,000. I acknowledge that there has been negligible community consultation to date on this project. However, it will be a key focus, especially as detailed design and engineering assessments progress. Our project partners in the Gascoyne Development Commission and the Department of Transport and Major Infrastructure with the Shire are committed to understanding community views and accommodating them to the extent possible in the design process. Whilst the report suggests a minimum 42-day public consultation period, I think the process will be more iterative in nature. Quite simply, we do not have a final design or plan to consult on at this point in time, but having community input as the plan comes together is critical. It will ultimately be the new council formed in December following elections that will make a final determination with respect to this project and design. Whilst this project is entirely focused on an engineering response, there is merit in considering concurrently other factors that will mitigate risk and deliver a safer community. These include immediately reviewing the drainage flats that intersect the Facine Wall to ensure they remain operable. Consider how our planning and building controls can reduce risk in South Carnarvon. One cost-effective option available is determining minimum floor level heights for new development in the inundation zone, developing and exercising inundation management and evacuation plans, and understanding the risks of excessive rainfall over the inundation zone and whether existing drainage and flood pumps can ameliorate these. The Shire of Carnarvon would be ably assisted by the retention of a community emergency services manager that could provide professional support and guidance alongside this project, responding to the many areas that I've just mentioned. I've recently written to the FES Commissioner seeking his support to enter into a new MOU with the Shire of Carnarvon to retain this role. However, refocusing it on the natural hazards that our community faces. There are also other benefits that should be considered. The Facine Wall in particular requires ongoing maintenance with subsidence observed at numerous points. Key to this project must be ensuring the structural integrity of the existing wall across the planning horizon of 50 years before building on top of this foundation. This presents an opportunity to reduce future financial risk to ratepayers associated with maintenance of the existing Forcing wall. There is a strong case presented in this report and supported by independent scientific studies for action. We are fortunate to have been offered a grant of $5.582 million, which does not require any direct investment from ratepayers beyond in-kind support. We have an officer's recommendation found at pages 82 through 83 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. (7.3.2), the Shire of Carnarvon Local Planning Scheme number 13, Amendment 11. The item, this item is also connected to the next item, being 7.3.3. However, I'll make my comments for both now. Both items seek a similar amendment to the Shire of Carnarvon Local Planning Scheme number 13. This process was first initiated by Council in July of 2025. The purpose of the amendments is to recognise and further facilitate the tourism opportunity that exists at Nalu Homestead Node and the 3 Mile Camp Node respectively. The reports acknowledge that no objections were received following advertising of the proposed amendments. Numerous submissions were received from state government agencies with a response noted from the applicant which satisfied the author of the report. The submissions and the response by the applicant and the Shire of Carnarvon can be found in Schedule 2 of the report. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 88 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.3.3, the Shire of Carnarvon Local Planning Scheme number 13, Amendment 12. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 93 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. 7.3.4, Shire of Carnarvon Mobile Trading Policy. This item seeks approval to advertise the proposed policy for public consultation. The mobile trading policy was last reviewed by Council in June 2020, which provides the framework for licensing and regulating mobile traders operating on public land within the Shire. The review process to date has consisted of reviewing policy approaches in other local government jurisdictions and internally with the former Council. Mobile trading is becoming more prevalent across Australia and indeed internationally. Ensuring an equitable regulatory framework that also considers the impact upon and interaction with traditional bricks and mortar businesses is important. The proposed policy seeks to designate the Carnarvon Airport as the primary location for mobile trading, with other locations designated as secondary or discretionary sites. The officer's recommendation suggests a period of at least 14 days for public consultation. Given the nature of key stakeholders, the subject of this policy, and that the policy is proposing significant change, I might suggest that a longer period might be appropriate in the circumstances. However, I'm not minded to amend the recommendation given it is for a period of at least 14 days, allowing discretion to be applied. We have an officer's recommendation found at page 99 of the agenda, which I move and declare resolved by simple majority. Takes us to 7.4, infrastructure services, which there are no reports. 8, applications for leave of absence, which there are none. 9, motions of which previous notice has been given, which there are none. 10, questions from members without notice, of which there are none. 11, urgent business approved by the presiding member or by a decision of the council, of which there are none. 12, matters for which meeting to be closed to members of the public, of which there are none. Which takes us to 13, the date of the next meeting. The next scheduled ordinary meeting of council is Tuesday, 28 July, commencing at 10 a.m. That takes us to item 14, closure. I thank the staff and members of the public for their attendance, and I declare the meeting closed at 2:50 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.